Read this morning from the 4th chapter of Mark. When evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's go to the other side of the lake." So they left the crowd behind, but they took him along. And just as he was in the boat, there were also other boats in the group. A storm came up and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said, "Teacher, do you not care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was all calm. He said to the disciples, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" But they were terrified and said to one another, "Who is this? The wind and the waves obey him. Who is this?" The word from the Lord in the house of the Lord. In the announcement time, I neglected. I forgot. We will be celebrating Burnett's life on Saturday at 1 o'clock. So plan on coming and sharing a time. There will be quite a time of fellowship after we do the service. But the service will be at 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Burnett was one of the first 14 who got together to begin to form a church, and is the last active member to pass. So we do have one of the first 14 still alive but not active with this church. So she will be remembered, and she was a good and faithful servant here. So come and share with us that day. Now I can get busy. Okay. Jesus said, "Have you no faith? Have you no faith?" I went on a fishing trip. I don't go fishing. If there aren't fish in the ponds at the golf course, I want nothing to do with them. But I went with a company that took several of us. I used to sell a lot of their product, and they rewarded us with a trip beyond the Arctic Circle, where we caught northerns. If we had food or fish in the box for lunch, they wouldn't land anything under 15 pounds. I was catching whales, and they were throwing them back. The last day we were fishing, a storm hit while we were out on this lake, and it's a huge lake, and there were 12 to 15 foot waves. And we were out there with an Indian guide and two of us in the boat, a 12-foot Aluma craft with a 9-horse outboard motor on it. I knew I was gone. I got as far down in the boat as I could get, and there's not much to hang on to, so I just left fingerprints in the aluminum. But that guy could run that boat. We'd go on the crest, down through and up on top, and down through, and suddenly there was our resort. Just welcome home. I can sympathize with the disciples who were frightened out of their minds, almost to death. Then you come along with David, who went to take some milk and cookies to his brothers who were in the army. Well, that probably wasn't milk and cookies, but he was taking some refreshments and supplies to his brothers who were fighting with the army. And he got there in time to listen to the boast of Goliath, who said, "I'll spread your bones to the winds and feed you to the birds." And what was David's response? How can somebody make those kind of remarks about my God's army? David had faith. The rest of the army didn't. So he went, after all the arguments and so forth, he went to Saul, who gave him his own personal armor, gold and trimmed armor, and a big sword. And he had to throw it away because the sword was too big for him to handle. And the armor was unfamiliar. So he faced Goliath with his staff. And as he went through the stream bed, he picked up 5 smooth stones. and put them in his pouch. And then with his sling, he slew Goliath. You didn't hear that because we cut off the reading before we got, but I'm assuming everybody remembers that David won the battle. Okay. My question now, why? Why 5 stones? Didn't he have faith that one would be enough? Did he think he was going to get 2 shots at Goliath? The big, strong soldier from the Philistines? Why would he pick up 5 stones? If you read on in the book, Goliath had 4 brothers. David was prepared to do whatever battle was necessary. Goliath's brothers fled with the army. They chose not to fight. But didn't God know that's the way it would be? David picked up 5 smooth stones and put them in his pouch and went with a sling and killed Goliath. Chucked off his head, put it on a stick, and stood it in front of the Israeli army and let them conquer the Philistines. And they slaughtered the enemy. Because suddenly they had faith in something, when the day before they had no faith in themselves and had forgotten their faith in God. Now this is a bloodthirsty story. I mean, there's bodies strewn all over and there's blood everywhere. Not the kind of a normal Bible study that we think about, because we like Garden of Eden and serenity and peace. But in the world, there isn't always peace. In the world, there are conflicts, especially conflicts between those who believe in God and those who don't. And unless those of us who believe in God are willing to put our trust in our faith in Him, we cannot win the battle. David picked up 5 stones because he knew that's all that he needed, as long as he had the arm of God around him. Oh, he threw away the helmet, he threw away the sword, he threw away everything that man had for him to be protected against the enemy. And instead he trusted in the ammunition for life that God gave him. Faith. We got a car that kind of drives itself. Pretty soon we're going to all ride in cars that drive themselves, and Nancy doesn't like my cruise control, but I kind of like it. When you put on cruise control, you get a picture of a car right here in front of you and a little blue streak right in front of it. And when you catch up with somebody, there's suddenly another car up there. And when that car comes back into blue streak, you're going to stop. But you know, I got my foot on the brake anyway. Now I know that the manufacturer did a fantastic job. I know that it's all programmed to be just absolutely perfect. And I know, but I'm hanging onto the wheel and I got my foot on the brake. Because I'm not trusting the car. God gave me reflexes. And I have faith in the gift that God gave to me. Well, the car is a simple example of what goes on in our lives. We are given into technology so much. And yet, we still need to remember that the one thing that we can rely on is the love of God. And He will protect us if we have faith. And that's the one thing. Goliath had no faith in a God. He trusted in his armor. He had no faith in a God. He trusted in his helmet and his sword. And David took him down with a rock and his faith in God. So if we're willing to take whatever weapons, whatever supplies, whatever confidence builder that God will give us, we can overcome just about anything. Oh, we have sickness, we have death, we have relationship problems, we have all sorts of stuff going on. But if we can trust in the love of Christ, we can overcome those things. And we have to trust the fact that God will supply us with the armament, the supplies, whatever it is we need to fight the battles that are there. And unless we are willing to come to the battlefront with the forces of the world, we will not overcome that which is against us. The world says to the church, we want to do. And the church says, go ahead. And the world says, we want you to approve what we do. And that's where the church has to take a stand. We know, we understand, we believe what it is that God has in mind for us, and we cannot compromise that. Oh, David could have picked up 9 stones or just 1 stone, but he took all that God provided for him so that he could overcome the enemy to his God. David wasn't fighting for the country. He wasn't fighting against the Philistines. He was fighting to prove the faith in God is a mighty weapon in our everyday life. Sure, he had fought the lions and the tigers and the bears and wolves and so forth. But what was real, what was absolute, was his faith in God. If the men were right, he got the king's daughter. His family didn't have to pay taxes anymore. That's what they said the slayer of Goliath would get. But he never once mentioned those things. They're not what he fought for. They're not the reason he went to battle. He went to battle because someone challenged his God, and therefore his faith in his God. And he went to prove that faith in God is the strongest weapon, the strongest tool, the strongest item in our arsenal of things. I'm going to drive my car. I'm going to turn on the automatics. And I'm going to keep my foot on the brake, my hands on the wheel. Because I can trust God. I'm not sure I can trust the guy who put my car together. And I will take the weapons, I'll take the supplies, I'll take whatever it is that God gives to me to make me able to stand up against whatever comes against me in this world. Because I want to be in God's world. Keep your hands on the wheel, foot on the brake. Amen. 5 smooth stones in a heart full of faith. Recognize your stones. He provides them to bring you peace. Peace. Amen.